Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a really important part of the mortgage process, something that can save you a ton of money if you know how to use it: discount points.
I mean, who doesn't want to pay less interest on their mortgage, right? It's pretty much the number one goal for every home buyer. Well, it turns out there's a way to do exactly that. And we're going to dive into how paying a little bit more upfront can lead to some massive savings down the road.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll cover what these points actually are. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of calculating the upfront cost and the new rate you get. We'll walk through a real-world example to see it in action, and then we'll tackle the big question: are they even worth it for you?
All right, let's jump right in. First things first, what in the world are discount points? So, they're not just some random fee your lender tacks on. Think of them as a tool. You're basically paying some of your future interest now, at closing. And in exchange, your lender gives you a lower interest rate for the entire life of the loan. It's a trade-off.
And this really boils it all down, doesn't it? This is the fundamental choice you're making. You're agreeing to a bigger bill on closing day, all to make your monthly mortgage payment a little bit lighter for years and years to come.
Okay, so we get the basic idea. But the big question is, how much are we actually talking about here? Let's break down the first piece of this puzzle, the upfront cost. And the math here is actually super straightforward. It all comes down to one simple rule. 1 point costs 1% of the amount you are borrowing. And notice I said loan amount, not the price of the home. That's a really important distinction.
So let's put that into perspective. Say you're getting a $500,000 loan. 1 point is going to cost you $5,000 right at closing. If you wanted to buy 2 points, you'd be looking at $10,000. See? It's a direct, simple calculation based on how much you're borrowing. Okay, so you've shelled out the cash up front. What do you get for it? Now let's talk about the other side of the coin, the reward, the whole reason you do this in the first place. Well, just like the cost, the benefit is usually pretty predictable. As a rule of thumb, 1 point will lower your interest rate by 0.25%, or 0.25%. Now, this can vary a little bit from lender to lender, but that's the industry standard. And you can see how this really starts to add up. Buying 3 points doesn't just nudge your rate down a tiny bit. It drops it from 6.875% all the way to 6.125%. Over a 30-year loan, a drop like that is huge. It can seriously translate into saving tens of thousands of dollars in interest. All right, so we've got our two golden rules, right? 1 point costs 1% of the loan, and it lowers your rate by about 0.25%. So let's put them to the test with a practical scenario, one that comes straight from the MLO Study Buddy Guide. So here's our problem. We have a borrower buying a home, making a 5% down payment, and they want to buy 2 discount points. The starting rate is 5.625%. So our job is to figure out 2 things. What's the total cost of those points? And what's the new final interest rate going to be? And here's how it all breaks down step by step. First, you have to figure out the actual loan amount, which is the purchase price minus that down payment. Then you take 2% of that loan amount to get the cost of the points, which is just over $11,600. Finally, you take the starting rate and subtract 0.5%. That's 0.25% for each of the 2 points, which gets you to a new final rate of 5.125%. Simple as that. So we know how to do the math. That's the easy part. But that leads us to a much, much bigger question. Should you actually do it? Is it a smart move? And look, there's no magic yes or no answer here. It totally depends on your specific financial situation and, honestly, more importantly, your plans for the future. So, how do you figure this out for yourself? You gotta ask some serious questions. First off, do you have the extra cash for closing without stretching yourself too thin? But then you have to think about your timeline. This is where the break-even point comes in, and it's absolutely crucial. The break-even point is the exact moment when the money you've saved each month finally adds up to what you paid for the points up front. You find it by dividing the cost of the points by your monthly savings. If you think you might sell the house or refinance the loan before you hit that point, then buying points is a bad deal. You'd actually lose money because you paid for a discount you didn't stick around long enough to fully benefit from. So at the end of the day, here's what it all comes down to. Buying discount points is a long-term play. It's a bet on yourself that you're going to stay in that home with that loan for the long haul, past your break-even point. Knowing the math is one thing, but knowing your own plans, that's everything. So before you make a decision, the real question isn't just about the rate, it's about your timeline. What's yours?